I'll like to call a speaker who is Deepika Singh, a confidence coach, a keynote speaker, and also a leadership and behavior expert who would be guiding us on the topic of clear and confident communication skills. Welcome, Deepika.
Thank you so much, Janvi, for the introduction, and welcome everyone on this wonderful webinar. So I am a confidence coach, like Janvi introduced me, and I am also a two-time pageant winner of Mrs. Global International and Mrs. India International. And I somehow on this journey realized that it's all about the confidence in you, that you can go ahead and win anything that you put your heart at. So today I'm going to, talk to you for the next 10 minutes or so about how do you communicate confidently with anyone that you want to, no matter if that person is senior or, if you're going for an interview or if it is a stranger. So there are some steps to developing your self-confidence. But a lot of times when I'm coaching people, I come across people who tell me that even after learning how to develop self-confidence, I am not sometimes able to feel confident. So the first thing I want to tell all of you all is it's okay to be nervous. It's absolutely fine to feel the butterflies in your stomach. Every great speaker, every great celebrity feels that too. All right. So everyone feels it. Trust me. The concept that I believe in is displayed confidence. When I say displayed confidence, it means that you are feeling stressed out or anxiety, anxious, or sometimes you're also feeling those butterflies in the stomach. But what is important that you display confidence. Once you start doing that, within a few moments, your brain starts telling you that you are confident to do this, and that is when you are able to achieve a task. So when I talk about displayed confidence, one of the first things that you must do is interact with people. One person in the room who doesn't talk at all or who doesn't interact much, unfortunately, people look at that person as someone with low self-esteem or low confidence. So try interacting as much as you can. Make new connections. If you feel nervous about it, start with small conversations. This era of everything on the mobile is a blessing because you literally don't have to stand in front of anyone before connecting. You can do that through all the different various platforms. So start with smaller conversations with people. Once you have built rapport, once this lockdown is over and you are there out there to network, it will be easier because your initial part of building rapport would already be done. Look for opportunities to talk publicly. Uh, they say the biggest fear is that of public speaking. Now, my trick here is that if you have achieved that or overcome that, then there is literally nothing else that can stop you or that can make you nervous. So take that one opportunity wherever you get to get on the stage. Nowadays in Zoom meetings or webinars, be that person who asks questions. Trust me, guys, once you have overcome this little hurdle in your head, which is a mental block, there will be no conversation that you will be scared of initiating. Another one is have somebody to mentor you. There are a lot of mentors that you can approach who will be happy to help you. Have a mentor, somebody who you can look up to, somebody who can, who's leading a life that you would want to and is ready to help you. Have a very confident body language. Before you start talking, what talks is how you're dressed and your body language. So sit up straight, keep your chin a little up, not very high, that's arrogance. Keep your chin a little up, talk with your head held high, keep a straight posture when you're sitting, and yes, even on webinars, because the minute you slouch and you start talking, even if you can't, you're not on the video, people will sense that casualness from your voice. So sit up straight and talk to people in a very confident body posture. Another thing, like I said, is to dress well. I'm also an image consultant, So I would like to, tell you all this that, okay. I would like to tell you all this that the first thing, unfortunately, what people notice about you is your clothing. Okay, so no matter how you think that what people are thinking of me, or uh, I will come across somebody as confidence, or once I start talking, people will like me. But people have made a first impression about you in within 2 to 3 seconds of seeing you, and that is because of the clothes that you wear. So dress appropriately wherever you go. Uh, if you feel overdressed, like if you go somewhere with a jacket on and you see people are not wearing a jacket over there, then lose it. uh, be confident of what you're wearing. Don't wear uncomfortable clothes, because then your body language also starts affecting. So it's all about taking little baby steps to come across as somebody who's confident. Like I said, I have the theory of displayed confidence, because it's all in the head. Once you start displaying it, people will see it and start looking at you that way, and then you feel a sense of accomplishment and say, wow, people are listening to me. Then you all you know start feeling confident automatically. So that's about me, for now. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Deepika. It was such a nice lesson from your side. We really loved it. And personally speaking, it is quite important for me also, so that I could enhance myself. But there is some kind of questions that we have that, uh, for example, you said like slouching and everything, right? So how do you do that? Like, how can you say that she is slouching or everything, and what is straight according to you? Because even when you are straight for a certain duration of time, you said that could be arrogance. So how do you analyze that you are perfect at that moment?
Right. So body language is a very complex subject, Janvi, and thank you for asking that question. So when I say slouching, you can literally see someone who's sitting with drooped shoulders. Somebody who is not interested, their body language shows. Now maybe they are feeling not interested, but the person who's viewing them can actually feel that they are, not confident to be a part of the conversation. So sitting straight is literally sitting straight where you feel that stretch in the spine. Now, if you look at our grandmothers and grandfathers, they are still all right with their spines. And we at this age feel the back pain and everything. And that is because we have completely lost the habit of sitting up straight. So, sitting straight is literally when you feel the stretch in your spine. And when I say arrogance, so you look at someone at eye level, you don't look at someone this way, because that's a little low on confidence. This is the right level if somebody's eyes are over here. But the minute you've done this, you look up to somebody like this and talk, a little more tilt in your head towards upward is actually arrogance. And when you talk about sitting, we Indians don't really realize this, but when we are networking with people on a global platform, it becomes very important. So every time we cross our legs and sit, and we are a little behind, it's arrogance again. So when you're sitting in meetings, or when you're not, sitting alone or relaxing, then it's best to not cross your legs and go behind on your chair and sit like, some thakur from somewhere. It's very important to be aware, because maybe we don't want to communicate that, but our clothing or our body language tells people that maybe this person is arrogant. We say this about some people. uh, vibe nahi aa rahi hai. I don't feel connected. And maybe you've not even spoken to that person, but you don't feel connected because that person doesn't have a welcoming body language, right? So looking confidence and arrogance is a very fine line, and we need to, the more you try researching about it, there is a lot of interesting stuff on body language that people can find all online, and just play with it to communicate what I want to communicate.
Okay, thank you. I again have one another question. That is, no, you said that we should go and try public speaking, but there are certain times when even when we are in public, though we might be good in speaking, there is a little bit of hesitation, and like there is some kind of fear that we possess at that time. So are there any tips that we could resolve it?
So like I said, one thing, remember that everyone feels nervous. Even if you're looking at the biggest of superstar or a celebrity like Tony Robbins there on the stage, trust me, before he gets on the stage, he feels nervous. I've attended a lot of seminars of these really great speakers, and I've seen them. I've got fortunate to work with them backstage also. They do feel nervous. So first thing you need to tell yourself is, it's okay. Tell that to yourself. Second thing is, even if you screw up, even if you're not able to be on the stage and perform the way you want to, it's okay, because you will not learn until and unless you have tried and failed and tried and failed and tried again. So the best way is to take an example from a child. So I have a daughter, and she fails at things and she doesn't give up. Like a little baby who's learning to walk will fall, will hurt himself, but do you ever see him just sitting and doing nothing? Obviously not. So be that child. Don't let that child die in you. Be absolutely fearless. One of the things that people can do in this lockdown period is take a 2-minute video, just 2-minute video of you introducing yourself. Imagine that you're standing in front of a stranger and you're introducing yourself. How will you do it? So quickly take a video. We all are great at taking selfies, but this time take a video. Circulate it within your family. Day one, circulate it within your family. It's okay if they give you feedback. It's absolutely fine if they don't. Second day, circulate it within your close friends. Again, same thing applies. You don't really need to take feedback, and it's okay if someone shares it. Day three, share it with people who are connected to you but not much. Say somebody who you speak to hardly in 15 days, once in 15 days. Day four, send it to people that you haven't spoken to in at least 3 months. Day five, you will have the confidence to send it to any CEO of the company. That is because our brain is telling us that it's not a difficult task. It only feels difficult when you're doing it for the first time. So for the first time, just send it to your partner, your mother, your father, your sister. That's it. Take baby steps, and day 5, you will not feel scared at all doing that video. Now, why I say do this during the lockdown is because when you've done that, and when people say, wow, that was a nice introduction video, when the lockdown is over and you go and shake hands, or rather do a namaste these days, and introduce yourself, you will do it confidently by default.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well,
It was a nice lesson, and we did learn that try till we succeed. Yes. Thank you once again. With these, I would like. Thank you. With these, I would like to call upon our next speaker, that is Pushpa NM. She is the President of India Awarded Head Women Empowerment at the EV Experts Foundation, a TED Talk speaker, and a member of Indian Inclusion. Welcome, Pushpa. She would be presenting us on the topic of script. Over to you, Pushpa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hanui. And it's very nice to hear your voice here. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. And my name is Pushpa. And today's topic is a scribe for visually impaired students and other specially abled people. I'm happy to talk to you all today. And I also like to say that education is important for every human beings. And education opens up the minds, and it expands up the mind and allows you to improve your life in many ways. Imagine in a situation in which you're asked to write an exam without using your hands. Would you be able to write your exams without using your hands? I'm sure not at all. So this is how people with a visually impaired feels their mind wants to write, but the hands cannot perform their actions. On today's note, that I would love to bring up to you a few steps that how you have to become your scribe and how to go ahead with that. And yes, I'll share my screen. Give me a minute. Okay. Scribes for visually impaired students, lending a helping hand the visually impaired people want to write, but their minds and their hands cannot perform on actions, as I told you earlier. And in today's sessions, I would love to discuss about what scribe means and who can scribe, and steps to follow as a scribe, and how do you become a scribe. Yes, my first point is what scribe means. A scribe is a person who occupies out the documents, and that's what I do. But I don't copy for documents, but I listen to a person who is unable to write his exams for because they can't read and write as they are visually impaired. In some countries, scribes are called as readers, writers. So who can scribe? Thing is, everyone can scribe. Every person, there's no age limit or anything else for a person that they can't scribe it. Even in a household wives, until 80 years old, a person can scribe. And there are many people who have scribed for this. Jennifer, I think I'm not able to share the PPTs. Is there any way that I can share the PPTs? Yes. Thank you so much. Now it's showing. Sorry for the technical issues. As I said, what scribe is and who can scribe. And people can, from the age of 18 years till 80 years, can scribe. And has such one as like people, should have some confidence level and listening skills and writing skills and the patience. Since I started this in 2007, and I was a little bit scared when I started about how to scribe for visually impaired students, especially a person who was not able to see his visions. And I was like, how do I go ahead with it? The very first experience made me to think that, okay, anything can be possible. And it is only for people who can volunteer and have that like-minded sort of people who can help these kind of people. So initially, I started only with visually impaired students. Going forward, I took over, for other categories also, which I really definitely know. I was not even trained about that one. And slowly, I moved on for cerebral palsy, and I started to, have the wavelength with them to how to, pitch in their words when they started. Normally, they murmur, and the humming sounds is there. And I started to listen to their lip movement and start writing their exams in the examination hall. And then I went to Down syndrome, and then depression students, and then normal students. Like in case for due reasons they might not be able to write that exam. Like they would have met with an accident, they would have got to fracture their hands. So I used to lend my hands to them. And so if you could see my graph over here, I started with a 10th standard student till the grade of, PUC, first year, second year, BA, BCom, and MCom, and banking online exams, railway exams, KPS board exams, BBM, BCA, CA exams, and all other kind of exams I've been writing. Still, I'm still going on actually. And this is what my graph says. And yes, there are a lot of things that we can talk about scribe. Just a few glance that I have just given to you today about my PPT, which shows that, little glance like how you got. Okay, first thing when you start scribing is you go to the examination hall and you be with the student sits next to you. And when you get an answer sheets and the question papers, you just have to read out the questions to the student, and when he says the answers, that means when I give him the question and he answers for that particular questions, I have to note down into the booklet. This is how the scribe starts going on. Sometimes what happens is you need to keep repeating the questions very often, because they have to mesmerize in their mind that for this particular question, what would be the answer. So you're not going to answer on their behalf of, because on the schools and colleges, there are cameras there where the footages are there. So they don't allow you to normally, help the students. You being a scribe, its only your duty is to just write down what he sees. So this is what scribe means. unfortunately, there are some steps which you have to follow as being a scribe. And for normally, government had made rules that being a scribe, you should be one step lower from their standards. Say, suppose initially we had that anybody can scribe for anybody else. So for 10th standard students, it's only 8th or 9th students can write as a scribe. So if you're of a same combination, same, I'm a BA student, I can't write for BA students. So this is the rules that recently they've just brought across from the government, but initially it was not there, all these kind. And I'm sure that, like now people are having that, wider range, saying that, okay, for BCom student, BA student can write. For BA student, BCom can write. This is the steps that we follow. And once when we go to the college, we will not be able to see the specially able person before you write your exam, or you will not be knowing what type of person he is or think. On examination day, you will meet him in the college, and then you go to the examination hall. That's where your contact would be. But before that, but otherwise also, apart from being a scribe, we can help in several ways. We can also make them to write their thing in the braille languages. One thing. Second thing is, like, we have a Skype calls where we can teach them the exercise, since they are not able to see that. So we read the lessons to them. If they have any doubt, they come back to the Skype call, and we tell them, so they listen. And apart from that, their textbooks and all, everything, what we do is, we have a set of volunteers where we record them into MP3. And as we all normally go and we hear the headphones, the musics, like that, they would be hearing their lessons, like what you and me have been recorded. So these are the things, that small things that we have been doing it for them actually. And how do you ascribe for a student is using a scribe in examination. You should write down all exactly what the student dictates. A scribe will only record responses, including maps. Okay, now when I'm talking about the maps, probably those people might not know, but how to draw the maps, right? So you have this finger hands, so you hold their hands, and they have a vision in their mind, though they cannot see, but in their mind they can visualize it. So I think this is the first experiment that I have done for the visually impaired students, for writing a statistic maps, or exams. You have for BComs statistic, particular table where, right? So I use their fingers like this, and I make them feel about, see, this is a chart that I have written what you have told like this, and the map I show them like this. So in this way, I started to make them practice about this. Now they're confident that, okay, they can identify any states in the maps. So that's one thing. Even in the graphs or diagrams, where appropriately exactly as edited by the student. I mean, what has been written, if the student identifies and dictates the amendment, read what they have written as often, and the students request. Normally what happens is, like, when we keep writing whatever they say, that they'll also feel that, okay, every as a scribe, as she or he has put across whatever I have told. So they will make you to read twice before they hand over the booklet or answer booklet to the people around there, to the lecturers. And that's how it takes the patient level, is where it shows for you actually here. And the confidence, see, if you're not confident, you cannot sit 4 hours with them actually. That is one thing. That confidence level should be, yes, whatever he says, I'm perfectly going to input that into his in the booklet, and that's the confidence level. Listening skills is very important, because why am I saying this is, they might say now, when I say for a particular question, they might say that now this answer, but next moment they might have popped up something in their mind, and they want me to they'll say, okay, you write it later, I will tell you, keep it in your mind, and I'll write it, maybe I would forget that one. So these are the things where small things we need to help them out when you're listening them. That's one thing. And last thing is, what I would love to say here is that handwritten, your handwriting represents their marks, what you have written, what they have said to you, and what you interpreted there in the booklet. So your handwriting should be very visible and neat, so that they get the marks. I mean to say that though we are as scribes, but their career is in your hand. That is, these all things input will make him to go to the next level of his studies or continuous educations. Sometimes what happens is visually impaired students, they are. You should not be very offended with him as they are blind or visually impaired person. They doesn't accept your help sometimes, but it's a common for people to shout at the blind or visually impaired person whenever we decline their offer or help. So that way you need to have little bit of patience and try to help them out. It is only we as a volunteers can help them to move on to the next career level so that they can continue their educations. So far I think from 10 to 12 years I've been doing as a scribe for many students, and I've been writing their exams. Many of them have just passed and gone to the next level. Some of them have got the government jobs, and many people, like, it is a satisfaction thing. Is it's not okay, you do something to the society. So there's a call as like, you should not wait for what society has done to you, but at least what our bit for society we can do, we'll have to do that. So on that note, I would love to say thank you so much for all of you for giving me this opportunity. And I'm sure that you'll have a lot of questions about how to be scribes, or how do you go ahead with scribing, or how do I volunteer things. Is yes, you can follow my page, and there are my WhatsApp groups where I have identified a lot of volunteers who come forward to help. So this is how we are just taking care of being their career paths. So thank you, Janavi, and thank you for this Planet Media for giving us the opportunity to talk about scribes. And I'm sure that many people would love to volunteer. I'll look forward for that one. And over to you, Janavi.
Thank you, Pushpa ma'am. It was a huge, different, actually an interesting session, as I might say that yes, people like those need recognition nowadays. Even they are well versed, but how to showcase it, it is much more important.
Yeah.
Though you need it, you have it, but still letting it out, showing it to others, yes, that we do stand somewhere is a different thing. And it's a huge step, I must say, that Scrib is doing a very well good job. There are some questions that people are asking for you,
Okay.
like what is your inspiration to start the Scribe network?
Okay, my first inspiration was like, everyone goes in their life, a lot of situations, and some kind of, ups and downs. Well, I can say that. So maybe in education level, I also had lots of ups and downs, and somebody with the help of a person, I continued my education. So this inspired me a lot. And one day when I was just traveling on the bus, so I used to see these people going in the bus traveling, and sometimes I also used to make help them holding their hands and crossing the roads. But unfortunately, one day I had an opportunity when I'm sitting in the bus next to me. They were just talking about, I used to ask them, when you don't have a vision to see, how do you continue your educations? They only said one thing is, like, people like anybody, like a volunteer who come forward. So those people will help us to move forward. So then I realized, I think I should do something.
That's great, actually. My next question is, do you scribe regularly, or there are some intervals that you prefer? Yes, some days.
Normally what happens in a month, I think in a year, I think I would be doing something. Sometimes it is 100 number students, and sometimes it will be 60 students. So what happens is, like, some students are in evening colleges, and some students are in day colleges. So I merge everything. Sometimes I take every weekend, and sometimes when it is in the evening colleges, most preferably in the evening colleges, I used to write from, I think, from 6 to 9, I think they had, actually. And most probably one thing I would love to say is, sitting 4 hours is very difficult for anybody else. That's the reason I said patience has to be there for anybody to take up as a scribe.
There is one more question, is that is, we have seen people blind, some people who are having physical deformities. but there is rare to find someone who is who is like suffering from Down syndrome and etc. So how did you come across those people? Because these kind of diseases are rarest of their kind, and it is like in one in thousands. So how did that happen?
I really don't know how that happened. Maybe I could say that it is all God's blessing, I guess. Actually, I meet different, specially people, and each different specially people have their own unique things. Say, suppose if I'm talking about cerebral palsy, lip movement is
Yes.
very much important to understand the wordings that they see. So one such, I think not one, I happen to write 3 or 4 or 5 students about that, like that actually. And first, when I started to write in a Christ College, I started to write for Hemant actually. Unfortunately, like I was taking much time for him to understand that wordings in this lip movement. Gradually, it started for me to become a practice for me to understand what they're talking in one go actually. The same way in Down syndrome, what happened is like when I was writing the exams visually impaired students, people used to ask me, can you write for my daughter, she's a Down syndrome, and can you write for my son, he's the Down syndrome, like that. So I said, yes, I'll give a try, because every move is a try for everyone. First time you will be not having anything known about it, and each experience teaches you a lot of lessons, right? So similarly, first Down syndrome exam taught me a lot of things to understand them. So you need to wait till they say the answers. You need to wait. So that's how I started this.
There is one more question though. As much as I know, these diseases are basically genetic diseases. Like they are deformities, but that is DNA. That is having their
Yeah.
deformation, and that leads to the syndrome. So if you
Yes.
have done like 2 to 3 different cases, write-ups actually, so all those might be different. So how did you learn those things, those sequences basically?
Okay.
Because
Sequences is like, hmm, yeah, please.
I mean, to understand that sequence is necessary to understand which kind of Down syndrome he is having or she is having. So the sequences is basically very necessary.
Exactly. See, some Down syndrome is like some people mentally they are something else. Their mental is not very often like how you talk now, and that next moment that talk is not being remembered by them actually. So suppose if I read out one question, at that moment she will say yeah, 1 or 2 things she'll say very slowly. Okay, but again if I ask you after 5 minutes, she would not be able to answer that question. So this way I mean, like, it is all the experience. Through the experience when I was interacting with them, I learned it. I learned how to handle them. So suppose if I'm sitting in the examination hall and I sit with a Down syndrome, and she will be wondering here and there when I say the questions to them. Okay, so when she's wondering, some scribes, what happens is like, as I said you it's earlier, the patience level is required for anything else, especially when you're working with this especially able people. When you don't have the patience, then you just walk away. There are so many scribes who have walked away, and I had gone and pitched in to write and complete their exams. So in a day, in one timing, say some 9 to 12 o'clock, I have written for one cerebral palsy and one visually impaired student in one bench. One person's combination is B, another combination is BBE. So this is the criteria where you face a lot of, so I have come across all these things. Like, so when I was saying that Down syndrome person, you need to really be sitting with her and keep prompting that same questions very often. It might be even 50 times or 100 times. Prompt the same question, and then finally you will get after 10 to 15 minutes. It might take according to how they are actually.
Thank you, ma'am. It was such a huge lesson, and I think we would love the we would love this, because there are many people who did talk about deformities, physical deformities, this, that, blind, everything. But you are the first person who came and like told people that yes, scribe is present there is necessary that we look upon to certain diseases that people don't know, but they are there. Down
Yes.
syndrome is present in like one people out of the thousands, but it is there, and those people need special attention. And thank you for looking up to that.
Yeah, lastly, I would love to end up one scenario about this one is like, see, for being a scribe, there is a lot of opportunities. Okay, a lot of people, students in across the country, they would need your help, and there are less people who are coming forward to scribe. And because the reason is they will not have a patience to sit for 4 hours, and they would not be able to repeat the same questions very often till they get their move on. So I would request any of the volunteers who are really interested, please do get in touch with me. You are needed in somebody's life. Maybe that life might go for a next step because of your help for volunteering. So do volunteering and be happy, and thank you so much. And especially in this COVID, stay home, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, there are so many people who are readily messaging and saying that they want to volunteer. In that case, you could put your like link and other details in the chat box so they could have it. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you all, guys. Keep moving.
Thank you. With these, I would like to call upon our next speaker, that is Sangeeta Param. She is a TEDx speaker, a mental health advocate, and she is from United India Insurance Company Limited. She would be presenting us today on the topic of mental health of the youth. Welcome, Sangeeta. Over to you. Thank you.
So hello everybody, my name is Sangeeta Param. I'm 25 years old from Bangalore, and today my topic is mental health in the youth. It's basically because I am a mental health survivor. I have bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. So what are these two big words? So what I have to tell you about them first. So in November 2014, I was diagnosed for bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. So what are they? Bipolar disorder is a mental chemical imbalance in the brain which causes extreme mood swings. And borderline personality disorder is something which is a personality-based disorder which comes in relationship management, anxiety, paranoia, and different kinds of things, which comes because of the environmental basis and growth development and different symptoms like that. So what is this mental health in the youth, which is such a big stigma in the society right now? So I was diagnosed when I was 19 years old, and I've been taking therapy and medication. And actually, just today before this session, I went to my therapist and my psychiatrist as well for getting my medication altered, and meeting my therapist regularly for my counseling sessions. She was actually very impressed, and she told me that I'm doing really well compared to what she has been seeing me. Even my psychiatrist actually told me that I've been doing really good, and they're going to start reducing my medication soon. So that's a yay for me. So what is this mental health in the youth? What is this big thing? So when I was about 15, 16 years old, I started self-harming. I started, I started being aloof. I started going away from my family members, my friends. I started becoming lonely. I started becoming alone. I started feeling very depressed and all lonely about it. So why so much trauma during the youth, especially during the youth time? So it's basically because of the different changes in the hormones in the body. And also there's a lot of stigma around mental health that people don't talk about it. People are scared. Oh, if you cry all the time, you'll be called an attention seeker. That's what happened with me. So people thought that if I cry all the time, I'll be called an attention seeker. So that's what they did with me, and that's what happened with that's what happens with a lot of people. So they hide all their thoughts. They hide whatever they are feeling, and they carry such huge baggages, and one day it just explodes out of nowhere. So it leads to an adulthood. Like all these wounds and these baggages of childhood and teenage leads into adulthood, and then it just explodes one day, and they're not able to handle their work stress, their family circumstances, and so many things. Their friends are doing better, they're not able to take promotions at work, and so many things end up bothering them, and it is so stressful for them. So why I started promoting my, like, like spreading awareness, not promoting, you can call it spreading awareness on mental health, is because as a survivor, when I started speaking, I started getting a lot of response, because people started telling, you know what you're feeling. I know exactly what, I can feel what you're undergoing. I know exactly what you're feeling, because you have undergone it. So what I want to tell you is, I have undergone bullying, sexual assault, and my dad is a cancer survivor. So he was diagnosed but he was, when he was in his 30s, and we were very young. I meant me and my sister, we were just in school, but he did really well, and he survived cancer, and he's doing very well now. And God was really good to us, and he brought them back to us. And then I used to self-harm, and it was such a completely messed up system for me. So it was so difficult that I had to, cope these all up. So one day I saw my dad spreading awareness on mental health. On cancer, sorry. He's spreading awareness on cancer. And I saw this lady, she was wearing a burqa, and she was just talking to her old father, telling that if this man can do it, so can you. So even we can come out of it. Even we can come out of this predicament of cancer. If he can come out of it, we can also fight and come out of it. So that gave me an inspiration and a hope that I can do it. So I started talking about myself and putting out my fears, my trauma, my pain out there. And I didn't care what people thought about me. I didn't care that people said, oh my God, she's just telling she has depression because she's trying to seek attention from people. She's just crying all the time. She just posts things on Insta about all these sad poems just to get all our attention, because people don't understand how important mental health is. She's doing everything for attention is the biggest comment and the compliment I got out of people who said that I was having a mental illness. So what are these two types? I want to be very clear on this. People think that when they're sad, they're depressed, which is not true. Not many people know that depression and sadness are very two different things. Sadness is that state of mind where you are rational. You don't get those irrational thoughts of killing yourself, self-harming, or anything of that sort. But depression, it makes you so gloomy, and it gives you all these type of irrational thoughts of people are leaving me, I'm going to commit suicide. Such kind of irrational thoughts depression brings into you. Sadness, I'll give you an example of sadness. Suppose you're having a really bad day and you're feeling very sad about something which you don't even know about. And someone comes to you and says, oh my God, you gave such a good talk. Oh my God, your story inspired me. You'll get the little spark of energy in you, and you'll be like, oh my God, somebody complimented me. And there's a little spark in you. There's like a little bit of happiness in you. But if you're depressed and then someone comes and gives you the best award you would dream of, it wouldn't matter to you. You would still be sad, because when you go to bed at the end of the day, you're still sad, you're still depressed, and you're still angry and frustrated, and you don't know what is bothering you. So it's very difficult to carry pain, but pain heals. A lot of people say time heals pain, but also you have to put a little bit of effort for it. Because today, if that pain is 100% in you, someday it will be 99.999%, and you can be proud that 0.001% the pain, you have taken effort to make it go away. So trust me, you can do it. Please don't be judgmental on yourself. You can come out of whatever you're feeling, the depression you're having, the sadness you're having. Remember to seek help at the right time. If you feel that you are undergoing some sort of heaviness in the heart, some sort of pain which is not going away, irrespective of speaking to how many other people you're speaking to, like if you might be speaking to 5 people about the same problem but the pain still stays, that means you need to seek help from the professionals. Don't let it get to the last line. I went till the last line, but I did not cross it. I sought for help at that moment when I realized that I need help. I did not take the last step. It's very important that you seek help, that you make sure that you seek help from the right people. You also need to do a lot of self-therapy. Okay, along with the external therapy you receive, you need to do a lot of self-therapy as well. You get up, you're feeling sad and depressed, you got up in the morning and brushed your teeth, give a pat on your back and say, you got up in the morning, you brushed your teeth, you did something good. You took care of yourself, you gave your teeth something to be, to be fresh. You washed your face, you felt fresh. That is something to be proud of. You got out of bed. That itself is a big thing to be proud of. So I'm going to end my talk telling you that you have to be proud of yourself. You have to love yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back, irrespective of whatever you do. Need not be something big like giving a TEDx talk or, achieving the greatest award in the world or giving a talk like this in a webinar. It need not matter. Participating in a webinar like this, being the unknown audience, that is a credit you have to give, because that needs a lot of patience to listen to other people talk, because a lot of people can talk and you have to make sure that you give a pat on your back for being the audience today. So credit goes to you, and I'm giving a big applause to all of you out there. And me being 25 years old, I still want you to follow my Insta page at Param Sangeeta. So my name is Sangeeta Param, you make it Param Sangeeta. And you can follow me on Insta, drop me messages. I'll give you my email ID. If anybody wants to talk, you can call me, or you can text me at sanju_param@yahoo.co.in. And you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can leave your questions on the question box, I'll answer them. So Janvi, off to you to ask me all the questions the people have asked.
Okay, so thank you first of all.
Yeah.
And the question is, like as you said, you faced both the problems, like bipolar and the other as well. So when did you come across and when did you realize that this is not sadness, this is depression, this is not something that is to be I should carry forward, but this is something huge and I should report it to someone like a medicinal practitioner?
So basically what happened with me was, I was carrying a lot of pain, okay, from childhood, from a lot of pain, like I told about the bullying part, the sexual assault. I was carrying a lot of pain, okay. I shared a little bit of it to a few of my friends and things like that. But then they convinced me, okay, they'll tell, hey, kuch nahi hoga, tum say, you'll get better, get over it, move on. Nothing helped. I spoke to 5 people I spoke to, it did not go away. No matter how many ever people I spoke to, it did not go away. So I made sure that, it's time, I need to seek a professional help. And I conveyed to my parents telling that, look, I don't want to live anymore because it's so frustrating for me to breathe. It was so painful for me to get up in the morning. So that's when I realized I need to seek professional help, and my parents were, for it, and they helped me out for it.
Okay. The one more question is, as you said, it was hard, right? And the more harder thing, I guess, is when you have a bipolar personality disorder.
Yes.
The thing is, in that disorder, you have 2 split personalities, and it is hard to control the other side of yours, which is basically trying to harm yourself, ourselves only.
I want to stop you there. Bipolar disorder is not split personality.
Okay.
You've got that wrong. I'm sorry for saying that. Bipolar disorder is extreme mood swings.
Ooh.
Okay, so I get hyper, I get manic, I get excited. Like alcohol, when you drink alcohol or take drugs, you get excited, right? That type of excitement I get. But at the same contrary, it's not during the same time. It's in phases. It's in episodes. Like first like a month or so, I'll be really excited. And immediately I'll go into a deep pit of depression for no reason. Like, kuch nahi hoga. Like some friend would have told something, even all that wouldn't matter. I would have gone into complete depression. So that the one you're speaking about is split personality, which is a different type of mental illness altogether.
Okay.
So there are different types of mental illness: schizophrenia, ADHD, and bipolar disorder is a type of mental illness where you have extreme mood swings, bipolar, different mood swings. It's also called as manic depression.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for guiding us with that.
No
And
problem.
yes, there is one question that when you went to someone, especially a medicinal practitioner, he might have started counseling you at first.
Yes.
And it at times is very hard to open up to someone who is actually new to one. For example, if it would have been your parents, it's quite easy. If it's your friends, it's okay, all right, to say some of the things, like
Yes.
especially the bullying part. Was it hard to go and counsel for certain things which took such an impact on your life?
Counseling is like finding your love at first sight. Trust me. Trust me. I'm telling you serious. Finding your lover is like finding your counselor. The person you trust the most will be your counselor. And I attended 4 to 5 counseling sessions with different people until I found the right person. So you have to strike the right chords with the right person in order to find whom you can trust. You can't just, I know how difficult it is to just randomly go to a person and tell about your life, mistakes and guilt and anger, frustration, pain and sadness. It's very difficult to go randomly open up to someone. So you will get those vibes, like how the person spoke to you, Deepchika, some missing. She spoke about the concentration vibes you get from people. You will get that vibe from that person. Okay, this person I can get. So it's like that.
Okay. So there is a next question for you that mental health is bad, actually bad. But do you think the social media is influencing these mental disorders?
Totally. Social media, it affects me also. Like there are so many times when I go on social media, I see on Instagram and Facebook, my friends post a lot of nice pictures, and I'll be like, why am I so depressed and sad and lonely? I don't have anybody. I don't know what to do. Why am I not so pretty? I'm so fat. I'm so ugly. I get all those irritating thoughts which makes me really sad. Okay, so social media has a huge impact on mental illness, but it's about how you take it. It's about how you respond to it. It's about how you realize that you are worth every bit of a compliment. The person you see in the mirror matters the most. Nothing else matters. So social media does have a huge impact, but social media also can be a benefit by, where you can spread awareness on mental illness.
Yes.
So that is one advantage of social media.
Okay. There is one more question that I would like to ask is,
Yeah.
this whole phase of finding that you have certain mental disorder and then moving ahead, trying to implement such issues with a counselor, overcoming it is actually a huge step as well as a process where it needs such a determination and confidence as well as the support. So how was your family support that took you
My
to the next step?
family was very supportive. I have a good inner circle. That doesn't mean everybody does. Everybody does not. It doesn't mean that everybody has a good inner circle. My family was ready to take counseling. Initially they were a little hesitant, but they were ready to take counseling when my parents were told that their methods with handling me was a little different and they weren't up to the mark. Okay, so they were ready to take counseling and they were ready to understand me and things like that. So it's very important you find your right inner circle, and the people whom you trust should be very important. So it's very important that you find the first circle should be very, very, straightforward and very close to you.
Again, there is a question. As
Yeah.
you said that not everyone have these kinds of families. It's very rare to open up to these kind of things. So what would you like to share to those people who are actually facing these problems, and they might be even seeing us right now?
Yeah.
So what would you like to say to them that yes, you could do this, you have to stand up for yourself? What are the certain advice that you would like to give?
See, standing up for yourself is one of the toughest thing you can do at any moment. You need not be depressed for standing up for yourself. You have to stand up for yourself every single day, no matter whether you're depressed or not, because something or the other will push you down. Let it be your boss shouting at you, let it be somebody on the road hitting you on the bike or scratching your car, something or the other will push you down. But you have to stand up to yourself. Okay, so how to see, when I was told that you have bipolar disorder, I was not sad. I was actually happy because I know the reason that why this is happening to me. I was actually relieved that, oh my God, there's something, people are doing research on something called as bipolar disorder, and people are there in the rest of the world who knows what this is. There are other people suffering from this. There are people taking medication for this. There is something called as bipolar disorder, and there are other people who are surviving this. So don't ever feel bad that you have a mental illness or anything of that sort. And if you feel that you need to seek help, take a friend, take a parent, take a sister, take a brother, somebody whom you can trust, because not everybody is all alone, right? Somebody has, you will have that one person. Take them to along with you, whom you can trust. Tell them that I am not feeling good, I need help. Help me to get better, and take them to the hospital.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience and telling people that, yes, it is the right time now that they should stand up for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And anything, you can just give them my mail ID and you can connect with me. Thank you so much, Janvi. And it was wonderful listening to the other speakers. It was very nice. It was a very good opportunity. Women empowerment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. With these, I would like to call upon our fifth next speaker for today, that is Srivalli Krishnan. She is a co-founder of Startup Scaler, a TEDx speaker, along with a global philanthropist, who would be presenting us today on the topic of design thinking. Welcome, Srivalli.
Hi everyone. Nice hearing to all the women in different forms. One as a scribe, one as a judo player, one going through serious mental issues and surging over it. Today we are also in emotional state where we are going through this COVID change in the world. Everything has changed. Today's topic was about crafting transformatory information. How do you process information which is coming to you from all parts of the world? And how do you design your life and design your work, design your time in such a way that it is best made use of? Because designing your life has now become in your hands. So thanks to COVID, now you have to make best use of available resources, keeping in mind everything which is thrown to you from the government, from the healthcare department, from the people around you, from your house, from work. So I would like to start my presentation. Janvi, can you start the presentation? Design thinking is all about creating an environment where you think about the end user, because every time what you usually do is you actually don't think about anybody in the product, or when you think about the customer when you're designing a product. It's usually we're thinking about about the product itself. You're not thinking about who is going to use it. Today, one simple example is like Swiggy was thought to be a food app. Today, it's a delivery app. You can order groceries. There's no differentiator between Donzo, Uber, Ola, or any of the delivery apps. They are all delivering the same groceries. Even Amazon has lost its charm as a marketplace and started delivering pantry items as So global and local economies are changing. The needs of the people are changing, and there's a fluidness created because of the legal and social behaviors. So how you conceptualize your thought, your product, your service has changed. So you actually need to understand. You need to understand what is you as users need in this situation, and the time to respond is very little. So it is you get both challenges and opportunities. It's for you to convert those challenges into business opportunities and respond to your customers in a suitable way. Like today we are doing this webinar, otherwise it could have been a seminar in a space. So that how quickly you're able to adapt yourself and move from one environment to another environment, like a COVID situation. We are heading towards fourth version of lockdown. How are things going to change? How are people going to behave? What are the things which are going to change globally? What is the medical situation? Everything is going to add on to how you're going to think, how you're going to act, and how you're going to behave, and how you're going to design this whole thing is what, keeping in mind your customer, your family members, yourself, you find solutions. You can use design thinking. The 5 parameters majorly on design thinking are, first you empathize with the people around you, understand what is the issue. You then find time and ask them questions as to why they're facing these problems. If somebody, for example, is stuck in COVID times, elderly person, he's not able to move around, you need special care for them because they're over 60 and they're very susceptible. Uh, uh, there are 5 elements in which, in this slide, we see that there are 5 elements, which is basically before implementation. You are able to empathize with your customer. Then you are actually describe the problem. What is the problem statement? You might have 100 causes, 100 elements the old person is facing. You actually define what is the problem, and then you actually gather the people who look after these old people and who are the stakeholders in the well-being of this old person, and come to a solution, understand their problems, what their solution, what is the old person's requirement as a solution is. So basically the end user or the customer decides what he wants from the beginning to end. From you have to just empathize with them, decide the problem, what is the most top priority of things the person is facing, and then you have to engage in collaborative association of brainstorming, and then you have to create a prototype, a situation, a storyboard, which the person can understand, where you're giving solutions. You don't not only come up with one solution, for an old person, like you have an attendant for them who are taking care, or you can have some robots which can take care of their needs, or you can have some telephonic assistance given to them on their mobile phones, so that they can order and it can be delivered to their doorstep. So these things can be, multiple problems can be addressed by brainstorming and actually coming up with a, you come up with a process to make this actually happen, enact it. If you have to, use any tools which you have to come up with the solution. And then when you find that the user is finally actually okay with this, you actually start implementing it. So there's no time lost in a discovery process, in developing a product and then delivering it to the customer. So Swiggy, you can see in the last 1 month has quickly moved from food app to a grocery app very quickly. They were able to do this. So this is how they're able to adapt. And they were able to capture the Donzo market, which was actually only delivering delivery anything which you want from anywhere in the city. So these kind of apps, which people who are using it are benefiting from this into the lockdown time, and especially who are not in the confinement area. So this is the design thinking, how businesses transform and how you transform. For example, how do you set up the bandwidth time within your home? You understand the need of each of the people. If there's a bandwidth issue, in your house, you distribute the bandwidth with your children, with your in-laws, with your husband and yourself. You have time, you can make an understanding within the family as to who is using what, so that you can get better bandwidth for your con calls and conference calls and webinars. So that's kind of planning will help. This thought process, if you implement anywhere in your life, It will be able to save your time, the way you respond, and you can make your decisions more friendly to your audience, yourself, or people around you. That's the process of design thinking. This can be applied for any kind of business, and this can be a part of your lifestyle as well. It's very important to be very mindful of what you're doing with your time in these days, and design thinking gives you those tools to actually implement that across your life, across your business, across anything you do. Next slide, please. Next, yeah. We've already talked about crafting the solutions for yourself. How do you do that? You first go through all these steps, which is you identify the problem, you go through these steps, and you make it yourself to get desired results. You come with multiple options so that you are able to rule each one of them out, and you go through these cycles again and again. So I think that is the key of design thinking, because it gives you the tools, and it also gives you ability to fail fast and quickly succeed with different kind of prototypes and achieve success very quickly when changes are happening so fast around you. So that is what a design thinking is all about. It is very simple, but it is used by the biggest of companies and the smallest of traders, without or with knowingly or unknowingly. But now it's very important to use it mindfully. And many schools from Harvard to Stanford, everybody teaches you at a very high cost. But if you're able to implement this thought process in a daily life, go step by step. This presentation can be shared with the viewers, and you can actually go and see a lot of videos on YouTube on how to implement design thinking concepts in your life and in your business. Business is more important because most of us are going to become entrepreneurs very soon, because most of us are losing jobs. We become consultants, or we can become independent contributors, or self-employed. So designing your thought process according to the situation to make an economic benefit of the opportunities available in this kind of environment is the most important thing for you. So you have to craft this design thinking for your life, for your work, and for your income. So I would like to present this tool to you for today, for crafting and transforming the information and data you're getting from across the world. Then this is why do you need this? Because we are in confinement, social distancing, everything is changing. So all these things, and we have to make all our solutions affordable, and we have to find solutions for our work and going the forward, the way we live, our education, our essential needs. So this thought process of design thinking, if you implement in your everyday life, you will be able to get benefit out of it. And the way we do business from an incubator or for a startup has changed differently. How they raise money, how they enable themselves, how they're going to go for the future customer enhancement or scaling up. We have to use design thinking in the future. So all these conditions, not only in life, work, education, health, you have to design your life. You have to give yourself a mindful time to engage in this activity, and use these tools again and again, over and over again, depending on your situation, wherever you are. You should be able to deliver these situations and answers to yourself using these tools. Last but not the least, I would like to say the last statement is thank you for listening to me. Thought is involved in this design thinking process. It's a very simple process. In all this, what will happen is, amidst all the amidst all the crises you're going through in your life, design in your life becomes very easy if you are creative, agile, and quickest, so that you can survive in these times. And design thinking is just a tool. You can apply it anywhere in business and life. I would like to say it again and again, because I see lot many people not designing their lives because they would not get the desired outcome. So your whole financial structure, everything can be answered by this tool and this practice. but it needs creativity, it needs ability to adapt, and you should be quickest to deliver the solution so that you can make best use of this time. So I would like to hand over to Janvi. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. It was our pleasure. With these, I would like to ask you certain questions. Okay. So
Sure.
the first question for you is, how did you come across this design thinking?
I was part of a very a small cohort of people who was identified by Government of India to go to US and study in Northeastern University in association with Harvard, MIT, and Boston University. A program on how to develop ventures in the emerging technology times where everything changes in 45 days, 90 days, where there is crisis. How do you handle businesses? So I'm one of the few people in the world who are called as startup ecosystem designers, and it's a part of that. We went to Harvard to study this, and I was handled by a very great lecturer and author and a businessman called Mark Meyer. He trained me on design thinking, and that's how I got to understand that what I was doing while going to a tailor and altering my dress according to my body and my style and everything, I realized there is a method to this, and this can be applied to any part of your life, be it business, work, health, finances. It's a thought process, and it saves a lot of time, and it helps better your personal life as well as your professional life in getting desired results. Every time we ask a question, why am I not achieved? You don't identify the problem, you don't identify your goals. You're not close. I mean, the goals are not clear. So this kind of helps you to unclutter what you want from life, what you want to deliver to your customer, and save time, because you don't have time in today's days. So you have to quickly, creatively come out with things, and this process really helps you. This is how I got to know about design thinking, and I'm implementing this not only to individual companies, individual lives, but also to countries like Uganda, or a city like Amravati, or a state like Meghalaya. So everybody needs a design ecosystem and a design process to get successful results. Even Government of India is using these techniques to achieve in COVID times, how they plan everything. What you see is happening in phases, and this is exactly what design thinking delivers.
Ma'am, can you give an example? For example, as you said, designing thinking can also be helpful for bringing a state or a country like Uganda and Meghalaya. How? Like, for example, we can understand that yes, identifying the issues and then implementing on it is a part of design thinking. But when we talk about a state or a country, how does design thinking make it easier as well as better?
When you say what you want India to do now, let's say, let's talk about India. Today, India is trying to capture 1,000 odd companies coming out of China, and make them the next biggest manufacturing hub, or export this thing. So unless we really plan what these companies exiting China are wanting, how do you create infrastructure? How do you promote skill development? If you think of larger problems like this, actually define what are the top 10 things you want, top 10 companies you want to come into India. What are the sectors? You plan that out. You first empathize with the people who are coming. This 1,000 people, you analyze who are the people who are making the most money, who are exporting out of India. What are the contributions they bring? And you empathize with them. Then you actually go ahead and identify the top 10 or 15 industries whom you want to capture. That's when you define the problem. And what are the problems they're facing while establishing in India. So you do that. And then the third step is actually you bring all the stakeholders together, including the customer, the company which is going out from China to India. What are their needs? What are their problems? You address them and come up with different solutions. And you're able to give them a roadmap, and you're able to give them 2 or 3 scenarios for different, if it's a manufacturing company, if it's a logistics company, if it's an IT company, they're able to give them options as to how their roadmap in India will be, how much time they will take to set up, how much time investment they have to make, what are the resources India which will provide in terms of tax, ESOPs and stuff like that. So all these things are something which have to be designed and addressed to, and brainstormed, and then solutions are given, and they're actually implemented. Even GST was done in the same way. It was a country. It was through design thinking. Everything it's followed in steps. So especially now when China is throwing out so many companies and India has to attract them, design thinking is one of the tools they are using to actually attract these talents. And once they are in India, we will see how the implementation happens. That's where the gap is. Thoughts are great, but implementation, you need people and proper design.
Thank you. Thank you. I must say that this is something new, and this would definitely help all the entrepreneurs that are quite watching you right now. And now they'll definitely think about design thinking. So that would enhance their business as well as new startups. Thank you. Thank you, Shiva.
Thank you. Thank you.
With these, I would like to thank each and every speaker present over here who gave their valuable insights. I would also like to say that if you want to share any of the other things that you might want to say, you can say it right now. I request to all the speakers, if you have anything that you want to say,
okay,
you can.
I would like to say something because this is one good opportunity for people who
and
have. Hello.
Yes,
Am
yes,
I
we can
audible?
hear. Yes, yes, we can hear.
First of all, there are a lot of hidden talents across the country, and it is very rare that we pick up that hidden talents. So that's how this may your people have given us a good platform for us, and I hope this would reach as many as people and make utilize, and people have to like your pages, because see, when we just talking about each speakers, when I saw all are in different sectors, and so much of informative, we wouldn't have known this informative. Actually, I think this is a good job that you people have done. Hats off to you, and keep sharing these knowledges every moment for us, because small things makes a lot of difference. And that's how today I had to be here in this platform. And thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Thank you for all the Planetech media, and I wish people to like your pages all through your networks, so you get a lot of people to meet across. And all the speakers were awesome today. Thank you so much.
Okay.
hello, Janvi, I would just like to thank everyone there. And hello.
Hi. You are audible.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone there for the help, and it was quite a vast topic of an platform to discuss something like this. Best of luck, and anybody who wants, you can please share the PPT with, they can reach me.
Will do, ma'am. Sure. Thank you. With these, I would like to say my heartfelt thanks to each and everyone present over here. I would like to thank Deepika for teaching us the basic knowledge that how can we enhance ourselves while we are addressing a huge crowd. I would like to thank Pushpa and ma'am for introducing these words, scribe, for taking that topic and sharing their knowledge about it, which was really necessary in this 21st century, that people do come across them and start helping them, even start recognizing them that yes, humans like these also exist and these people need help. With these, I would like to thank Sangeeta Param for bringing his her own experience in the focus, telling people that yes, these conditions, these mental disorders are pertaining in this world, and we need to take into consideration, as well as we should start working on them, because if not today, I don't think so there is any other day to start or implement those issues. With these, I would like to thank Srivali Krishnan for teaching the designing in thinking, basically, which was specifically a new topic and definite something that each an entrepreneur should consider while bringing his or her startup into focus. It might help them to enhance as well as implement certain other techniques so that they could make their business and startups flourishing and nourishing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, each and every panelist as well as the attendees who spent their valuable time with us. With these, I would like to thank Planotech Media House for providing us such a huge platform that we could come together, share our knowledge as well as experiences, and let the world know that yes, these things are there. With these, I would like to end this webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.